Being 10, 12 minutes late, we want to go ahead and try to get started this evening. And I'm sure most of you know, but for those of you that don't, my name is Stan Pickett. I'm the mayor of Mesquite right now. And I just, the first thing I want to say tonight is thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. I mean, I have been in office since June of this year, and I have tried to talk about getting citizen involvement. Well, you've shown we've got citizen involvement, and I do want to say thank you for being here tonight. And I will try my best not to make that happen very often. Tonight we're here to hear from you, but we're also here to try to give you as much information in a fairly short amount of time as we can. We know most of you are aware and know about this project and know about a lot of the pieces of it, but we have posted this. We do have a quorum here of council members, and we are here tonight to talk about really one thing and one thing only, because it is a posted public meeting, and that is the Gus Thomasson corridor. So anything beyond that tonight, we will, again, by law, it's not about what we want to talk about. We try to follow the laws of this country and this state. We will have to defer some of those questions to a later time, but we are here to talk about Gus Thomasson. This project has been around for many, many years, and we've had a lot of opportunity. There have been other meetings similar to this, not just like it, but similar to this, that have been conducted, I believe, going back to as early as around 2008. We are recording this. You see several cameras around. There's microphones here, and there's others wired and hooked up. And it is a public meeting, and it will be recorded, and it will be able to be accessible. What we hope to do tonight is we are going to have staff, and I'll introduce them in a few minutes, present some background information again. And I know a lot of it, this will be, I've already heard all that, but we're going to try to be concise, talk about the history of the project, the different components of the project, and the impact the project we hope that it will have in this corridor. Once that presentation is done, we are going to allow our city council a time of feedback and a time of questions. So once that's done, we'll take the microphone over for the council members, and they're all seated right down here. I'll introduce them in a minute and allow them to ask this panel anything they want to ask. Following that, we want to hear from you, and we do want to be respectful of each other's opinions. We want to be respectful of each other's time. I will say right up front, our council is willing to stay here tonight to hear as much as you want to tell us. We are here to listen. When I use the word respectful, what I'm really meaning is you are welcome to, I will say this, you are welcome to come up and repeat the same thing that four people have said if that's what you feel like you just need to do. But I would ask, if everything that you wanted to say has been said and we've heard it, again, if you don't mind, come up. Give us your name. Tell us where you live and say, they've said it, I'm with them or against them or whatever, and allow us to work through everyone that wants to speak. We'd love to give everybody, we want everybody to have that opportunity to speak tonight. One of the things when we do get to the speaking portion, because we want to have a record of all the people that speak, because it's recorded, because it's a public meeting, we are asking you to put your name on a card. We're going to be using the microphone. One of the things, in order to, again, so everybody can hear, so everybody has a chance to talk and respond, we are going to be using this microphone right down here to my left and your right. And as we get to that portion, we'll reiterate this again, but we would like for people to line up 4, 5, 6 here so that we can just go right through, so that we don't have to raise a hand, wait for 2 or 3 minutes while that person makes their way down and across. So we'll explain this again in a minute. We'd like to do that, and if you could help us do that, that'd be great. We'd like for the comments to be 3 to 5 minutes, but we understand if you need to say more, we do understand. We just ask that so everyone can get an opportunity. If you can limit to 3 to 5 minutes, it would be appreciated. And then following those questions, once all your questions have been answered, we are going to, at that time, have a chance for any council member that would like to come up and address you to come up and address you. So that's kind of the lay of the land. That's kind of what we hope to do tonight. Again, we'll be here. Your council members are here. We're here to listen. We've provided opportunities in the past. We continue to get your emails, your phone calls. We appreciate that very much. And we are trying to open this up and show you that we will sit down, we will listen. This is a very good group tonight. I've been told there's over 300 people here. We've got 144,000 residents in Mesquite, Texas. We are not a small country town. We are a metropolitan city, and we know that everyone has a voice, and we want to hear from as many people as we can. At this time, I would like to introduce those council members that are here. I know that some of them are going to be a little late, but if you would, just kind of stand and wave. We have Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Bruce Archer here. We have Council Member Jeff Casper. We have Council Member Bill Porter, Councilwoman Shirley Roberts. I know that Dennis Tarpley, and coming in the back is Mr. Greg Noche. So we should have everyone here tonight, and we thank you all for being here. Gotta be careful of the mic. At this time, I'd like to introduce our presenters tonight, and once that's done, I'll turn it over to them. We have, also our city manager, Cliff Gahely. Sorry, Cliff. Cliff's here as well. Just make sure you know him. We have our deputy city manager, Jerry Dittman, here tonight. We have our consultant, Trent Petty, here with us tonight. Public Works Director, Tim James, and our sorry, Richard, I forgot your title. Planning and Development Director. See, it's just too many names. Richard Gertson is here tonight. So with that, Richard, so since I messed that up, I'll turn it over to you. You may want to hold it, or you may want to put it on the thing there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I am Richard Gertson, the Director of Planning and Development Services, and my title recently changed, and so the confusion is understandable. It's a pleasure for me to be back here in Vanston and talk about a project that, as the Mayor has stated, has been in the making. It's been in the works now for quite a few years. It's a lot of great information we have to present to you tonight. My role tonight is to talk just a little bit about the history of the project, somewhat about the design and the goals of the project. I'll be followed by Public Works Director Tim James, who will then be followed by Trent Petty, who has been working with us on the project, and then finally Deputy City Manager Jerry Dittman. I can't see the screen, so I'm flying a little bit blind, but I will try to remain coordinated with you. We'll start with the general question of who started Thomasson Square. That's not really an unusual question. A lot of people want to know. Where did it begin? Was it something that we just dreamed of at staff level? It actually began going back as far as 2004, when the City Council designated 4 neighborhoods in the city as target neighborhoods. That designation was based upon some examination we did of areas of the city that had some obvious signs of physical and economic decline. And the Casa View Heights neighborhood, generally at GT and immediately to the west of that, was one of those target neighborhoods that was selected. The city staff then, after that designation, we started meeting with the residents. Sometimes we had 30 to 40 persons at some of our neighborhood meetings. We met at the Vita Life Church just down on Oates. Some of you may be familiar with that church. And we talked about what those residents wanted to see in their area, their immediate neighborhood, as well as the surrounding street and neighborhood. And they came up with over 24 ideas. That's roughly 24 ideas that they wanted to see by way of improvements over a period of years. We allowed them then to actually prioritize those ideas, and they were developed into some strategies, okay, and gave direction then to the city. It was the citizens giving direction to the city on the kinds of things they wanted us to pursue. They kept stressing, for one, the importance of being able to reconnect their neighborhood with the Gus Thomasson Business Corridor. Many of them remembered a time when they could walk to the Gus Thomasson Corridor and get their daily goods and services there. But that was a difficult thing now for them to do. And so they asked that we look at a new zoning ordinance that would help revitalize the area and generally make it usable again for people. The council adopted that plan, and with the adoption of that plan in 2007, it gave direction then to staff persons like myself to then pursue those strategies. With that, we began to develop the Gus Thomasson Revitalization Code. This is the code that actually then implements the goals that were set out. The code was adopted by council in December of 2008. Among the goals that the council established as a part of that code were to achieve economic revitalization at a neighborhood scale, give the area a very distinct visual appearance, and create an experience for persons wanting to redevelop in the corridor and come to the corridor for shopping, visiting, and so forth. And finally, to make it, again, usable for people, make it pedestrian friendly. On just that code, there were 6 public hearings, or public meetings, a number of public hearings, and we had really great participation at that time from the residents of Castle View Heights as well as the businesses that were a part of the corridor at that time. And we actually, based upon their feedback, adopted some special provisions in the code to respond to their needs. And one of those needs that I kept hearing from business owners was that if we're going to create a code that has a totally different look and feel to the street, they felt like it was important that we have on-street parking so that customers could be able to access those businesses quickly and directly. After the code was adopted, an unexpected opportunity arose. It's something that, I'll tell you, in my experience, after you adopt a code, it's something that is long in coming. But basically, 3 years after this code was adopted, the council had an opportunity to apply for a grant with the North Central Texas Council of Governments, a sustainable development grant. We used the Gus Thomasson plan that was developed by the residents as well as our code as the guiding principles for our application. The items that you see here on the screen were actually some of the excerpts from that application that was made to the Council of Governments. It showed, for example, a narrowing of the street from 6 lanes to 4 lanes. It showed the kind of inside-outside activity we wanted to achieve with businesses over the long haul. We also had to have at least 2 private partners join us in that application, and we did. One of those was the Broadway Square property. We had that from the owners of that property saying that they would like to see this project and would be willing to, in time, redevelop their property if the project was completed. Our other private partner was Ace Hardware that said the same thing. As we began then design for the corridor, we did have in mind the urgent need to create a very unique place. And what do I mean by place? You may hear that often, but it's not well defined sometimes. A place is not just a location on the map, because in that sense, everywhere is a place. But a place, as we speak of it, in terms of creation and revitalization, it's a unique collection of qualities, characteristics that provide meaning to the location. You know, if one location is just like every other location that you visit, and there's a lot of that in the Metroplex, then there's less reason to visit those places or to spend your money in those places or to invest in those places. Authorities on economic development agree on one thing. How people think of a place may be less tangible, but it's perhaps one of the most important things that people do when they're looking for places to invest their money to create new businesses. In order to create this sense of place, cities, and Mesquite is one, needs to create places that are uplifting and memorable and distinctive from other places. let me just point out some of the things that we tried to do design-wise here with this project to create that memorable, distinctive place. Lauren's going to step through some design elements, and one is, again, the narrowing of the street in order to provide a traffic calming effect from 6 lanes down to 4 lanes. Another is we actually have a new mid-block intersection, and you've seen this as where this is going to be, where the new street is being constructed next to the Villas Advanced Park. That's a traffic calming intersection, table-topped, in order to help reduce the speed of traffic. The roundabouts provide not only, as many of you have heard in previous meetings, some efficiency and safety for the vehicles as well as pedestrians, but they provide great markers, bookends, things that people remember with regard to this project. The wider pedestrian areas, as well as a dedicated bicycle path, are other elements. After this project began in terms of design, we had another opportunity come up where we were able to purchase the old putt-putt golf site. Many of you may remember that. That was purchased, and it was located in a great spot for us, right on the mid-block intersection. This is going to be used eventually for communal parking for visitors, customers to this area to help them access the businesses. On-street parking, I've already mentioned that. We have a pedestrian bridge that is going to help connect the neighborhood, Cassaview Heights neighborhood, with the corridor. All of these things collectively add up to create the project. Okay? You can take one, add, subtract, and there are others I haven't even mentioned yet. But collectively, they create that kind of place that we believe is significant, and it's memorable, and it will help differentiate this part of Mesquite from other areas. I want to just point out how an important organization that is made up of developers who they put their money where their mouth is when it comes to development. That's the Urban Land Institute. It calls all of these things the place-making dividend, and you're going to hear more about that tonight. It's a dividend when you create the place. When it comes to 21st century economic development, a key concept is community differentiation. Without it, you have no competitive advantage. And that's definitely one of the things that we're trying to achieve here. Many of you have seen the progressions that we have of various views, what will happen over time in parts of this project, and we have some boards here for you tonight to look at that present the final stage of these progressions. This one here is at Oates, looking north. The Texaco is on your left-hand side, and the next slide shows this is basically what the project or what the area looks like when the project is complete. The wider sidewalks, the dedicated bike path, as well as the landscaping. And then gradually over time, new buildings begin to fill in as they redevelop along the street. Even the owner of the Texaco at the corner of Oates and GT has indicated to us an interest in redeveloping according to the code that, again, is the driver for this project and many of the goals that we have. Finally, I'll mention another opportunity that we had that fit into the goals of the neighborhood and the corridor, and that was the Villas Advanced Park. We had as a requirement of the grant to actually achieve some sort of vertical mixed-use project. And that means retail at the bottom, residential above. Once again, I can say that that is a type of project that is extremely rare to achieve. There are many cities around here, our size and somewhat even larger, that struggle every day to try to achieve this kind of development. This opportunity was presented to us, and we took advantage of it. It was approved by the City Council. It's a $23 million investment. It's the first sizable infusion of capital, private capital, in the corridor in over 3 decades. This project is designed very intentionally to merge with all of the elements that I've talked about that are part of Thomasson Square. Physically, the way it's built, the infrastructure and so forth, it is tying into the way that we have Thomasson Square designed. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Public Works Director Tim James.
I'll warn you up front, my information is not nearly as exciting as Richard's. With this project, as Richard already mentioned, the proposed street will be reduced from 6 lanes to 4 lanes. The area and specifically that we are discussing is Gus Thomasson from Moon and Whitson on the south to Carla on the north. This area has a very good history of traffic counts. We have a lot of data that we've collected over the years that we're able to use as we looked at the design of this particular section of roadway. Since traffic counts can change at intersections, that's why you see there's counts north and south of Oates. We want to make sure that we look at data, good data, both north and south of Oates. Since a lot of people can be moving through that intersection, either traveling east or west also. And these traffic counts are very important as we look at any particular roadway project. They help us look at how this road is going to serve our residents, how traffic is going to be maintained through the area. Our standard practice as we look at any particular roadway project, we use 6,000 vehicles per day as our standard for 1 lane, the design capacity of a single lane. And what that means, that's a level of service A. Level of service is simply a way that we describe how traffic flows. They're described as A through F. A being the best, free-flowing traffic, and F being complete gridlock, you're stuck, you're not moving anywhere. So the 6,000 is what we use to determine a 1-lane capacity in free-flowing traffic conditions. So a 4-lane design through this area with the traffic counts that we have, if you look, we have around 20,000 north of Oates and 22,000 south of Oates. For a 4-lane design at a level of service A, the best criteria, it can handle 24,000 vehicles a day. Now, keep in mind, more cars can go through there. That's just in free-flowing condition. That's the best conditions that we, for urban arterial roadways that you can have. Also remember, as Richard pointed out earlier, through this corridor, we have on-street parking, increased pedestrian facilities. There are a lot of elements through there, and we want to make sure that that design does not encourage speeding through the corridor. That's very important as we look at this. Traffic engineers have studied data through the years, different places, different conditions, and there's several things that normally always hold true. And I think that all of you as drivers, you understand that straight roads, wide lanes, people drive faster. That's why interstates, they make them straight, they make them wide with very few elements out there so people can drive faster. Same thing on urban streets. The straighter we make them, the wider the lanes are, the more lanes they are, the faster people go. Another feature that Richard pointed out, this project includes roundabouts, both at Carla on the north and Moon Whitson on the south. These features have been included to enhance the project. That's why they were included. Richard pointed out some of the features of why they were put into this project. One of the big items that we've looked at was the traffic calming that a roundabout brings into an area. Remember, there's on-street parking, pedestrian activities through this corridor that are planned to be improvements to help revitalize the area. So these features enhance the ability to calm traffic, to slow it down as they come into this corridor. If you think when you're driving, once again, straight, wide open, you're moving fast. If you have to go around a curve, you slow down. Roundabouts do that. As traffic comes through an area, you have to slow down, you have to look, you navigate around it. That makes it safer for the on-street parking. It makes it safer for all the pedestrians in the area as you move through this corridor. They also reduce congestion when they replace a signalized intersection. You're able to keep moving. I don't know about you, but I would rather be moving than be stopped. And so at least if I'm moving, it helps you navigate the area. You slow down, but you're still moving. At a traffic signal, you stop. So this helps you move through. When it replaces a signalized intersection, it helps the traffic keep flowing. It reduces that backup that occurs anytime a signal goes red, the cars stop, they start again. This maintains a better flow of traffic. They are proven safe. We're not the first city who's ever proposed roundabouts. They've used in a lot of different instances 4 corridors just like this to help calm traffic, to help improve areas. There's a lot of cities that you will see later on that have incorporated these design elements into their projects. And they're also designed to handle all the types of vehicles we foresee using this corridor. That's one of the design features that we look at to make sure that emergency vehicles and larger vehicles can navigate these. They're designed to allow those turning movements to get where they need to go through this corridor. To kind of give you an idea of the scope of this project, the overall cost estimate under the proposed conditions that we have, the total cost estimate is $8.6 million. So this is not an inexpensive project that we're talking about. The design portion is around $700,000 and the construction portion is around $7.9 million. Of that total 8.6, $3 million we would receive through a North Central Texas Council of Governments grant to construct this. So far to date, what we have spent, we've spent $620,000 on the design, providing you a lot of the information you see here tonight, as well as we've spent $660,000 on construction. There was a portion of the sewer line that we were able to go ahead and construct with another project that we had going on, so we got some economy of using a contractor that was doing some other sewer line work with us in town. That totals up to, we've already spent $1.28 million. Which of that, a little over $268,000 has been reimbursed through our grant with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. Next, Trent Petty will give you a little bit more information on the project.
Thanks, Tim, and I appreciate the chance to be here tonight. I was hoping when the mayor introduced Richard that he would really just say he's a consultant, because being the only consultant in the room is never a good place to be. But I feel like I've been involved with this project a long time. I started working with the city on this project in 2012, and I'm an ex-city manager. I was a city manager of Grapevine, Texas for many, many years. So I've had a part of revitalization. I've been involved in projects that may be a bit controversial, but that in the end turned out to be something that people really were proud of and that people enjoyed being a part of. And it is a disadvantage not being able to be at this, but Lauren, if you would hit that first button for me, please. What I'm putting on the screen are some recognizable places that most of you will see immediately around the Metroplex. You see Addison Circle. You see South Lake Town Center, the shops at Legacy. You see West Village, even Roanoke, Texas. Each one of these places have achieved some level of recognition because of what the community has done to create the sense of place, the things that Richard was talking about earlier. Every one of these things started as either nothing or as an area that had seen significant deterioration and needed support. It needed the city to come in and create an infusion, an opportunity for new business, an opportunity for new people to come in that wanted to live or work or play or be entertained or eat or whatever in these areas. And each one of these are successful. And as we talk about what it takes to create success on projects like this, I like to use the term relevancy, because one of the things I think we want to achieve in Mesquite with these kind of projects is relevancy. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. When I think about the term, I ask myself questions. When I ask whether we're relevant or not, I ask what sets us apart? What makes us different than everybody else? What's the first thing that comes to people's mind when they think of Mesquite? What's the first place that people think of around the Metroplex when they think of the city of Mesquite? What is it that draws people to us? What makes them want to come here from Dallas or from Rowlett or from wherever to come to Mesquite? What are the places in Mesquite that we're most proud of? These are the things in my mind that create relevancy. These are the things that ultimately define how we become relevant. And most people would agree that if you are not achieving relevancy, then it's possible that you're either static and doing nothing or that you're going backwards. If you spend any time at all in the GT corridor, you would probably agree that the corridor over the past many, many years is not on the upswing today. It's a corridor that needs some of the same help that some of these other places I've pointed out needed when the government decided to step in and take a stand and achieve a place that people recognized all over the Metroplex. There's a lot of examples, Lauren, if you'll go forward for me, around the Metroplex where this has happened. This is just a few. And I want to point out that these kind of projects are not limited only to places where there's a whole lot of money, or it's a really, really high demographic, or it's a place that there was already a viable corridor and people just kind of naturally went to it. These projects all around the Metroplex represent places where there was very, very few things to start with, and they represent places that are old and some falling apart and some deteriorating, but all places where the city councils of those cities, in support with the citizens, have decided to take a stand and create a new sense of place, create a place that we're proud of, create a place that we want to be a part of, create a place that is transforming from a deteriorating condition to a condition we're all proud of and want to bring our friends and neighbors to visit as well. I've seen some of this happen myself in my career. When I first moved to Grapevine in 1989, they were boarding up and putting vinyl on the old buildings on downtown Main Street because it had basically been written off because there was a runway called 1634 West that was going to be built at DFW Airport that literally lined up about 50 feet off the middle of Main Street in Grapevine, Texas. As a result of it, there began to be this effort that said, you know what, this area is kind of past. We've kind of lost it. It's really not going anywhere. And as a result, we started seeing rezoning for mini storage warehouses. And people that lived in the area began to move out because they didn't feel like it was safe anymore, or the runway was going to be such a bad impediment that they could never protect property values. But that's how that started. If you've been to Grapevine today, I think most of you would agree that there is some relevancy to Main Street and Grapevine. It is a place that most people enjoy going. It is a vibrant place. It's a place that has people coming to it. And it's a place that's more and more recognized around the state as an attractive opportunity where transformation and revitalization took place. And I say that only to say there's a lot of correlation. Grapevine wasn't a dramatically wealthy community. Grapevine didn't have millions and millions of dollars to spend on Main Street to turn it around overnight. But Grapevine did have a vision, and there was a dream that just because it's deteriorating today doesn't mean we have to accept that condition. We can do things to turn that around. And the city stepped up, and Main Street Grapevine turned into what it is today. Again, it takes time, but it does happen, and it's not just a function of how rich you are or how big you are or how many people you have. Lauren? There's a lot of supporting actions that we are taking on the Gus Thomasson corridor that help create not just the construction project, but help it go forward indefinitely. How many of you here tonight took the survey, the online survey? That's great. That's fantastic. There were 743 people that took that survey, and we're going to go over the results of that in a minute. But suffice it to say that over 80% of the people that took that survey agreed with most of what I've said. And that is, this corridor needs help. This corridor needs revitalization. Now, maybe there's different ideas about how and some of the specifics about what's to happen, but everybody, I think, agreed that there needs to be a new vision for Gus Thomasson. So when we were awarded the COG grant for this project, it created a huge flow of capital that I think the council did a great job of channeling into a project that really creates a new vision for this corridor. But that's not enough. One of the things that has to happen when you enter into a project like this is you have to go from that construction phase to what happens 18 years from now. What does it look like 20 years from now? And the council saw that and recognized that. And one of the supporting things they have done to create long-term sustainability for this corridor was to create what's called a tax increment reinvestment zone. Lauren, if you'll go forward for me one more. Yep, there we go. So a tax increment reinvestment zone is an area where the council designates boundaries, and they basically say that we're going to take 75% of the new taxes, not the existing tax base, but the new taxes that are generated from new development, and we're going to put that into a bank account, a fund. And then we're going to have money to reuse to continue doing things in this corridor. So what that does is it gets us past construction, because I can tell you nobody's going to have fun during construction on this project. It's always a pain. But 5 or 6 or 10 or 18 years from now, we've got to make sure we put sustainable elements in place so that there's funding, so that this project has a chance to stay viable. And 20 years is a long time, and that's how long the council designated this money for. It's not new money. It's the taxes that will be raised on new development, and we protect 100% of that tax base that's there today. So literally, we've created for ourselves a savings account where we said, you know what, let's plug this money back in to the corridor as we need to on public projects for the next 20 years to make sure that this stays sustainable. And that's what the TIF does. That's what the TERS does. And what we estimate is that over 20 years of conservative development, that'll generate over $8 million in new money to be able to put back into the corridor. And that has already begun to make a difference. Because in 2009, 2010, the economy wasn't great in the Metroplex anyway. But as it began to come back, we didn't see much improvement in the Gus Thomasson corridor until we announced this project. In 2014 to 2015, we've seen 10 to 30% increases in property value because everybody else recognizes that Mesquite has decided to take a stand, and this area is going to increase in value. The development community doesn't get fooled often. When they see those kind of numbers, they think that's investment opportunity because that's an area that's on the incline, not an area on the decline. So I think we're really happy with the fact that we're starting to see some of those inclines on these property values. So let's take a look at the survey. Those of you that participated, I'm going to consolidate the results because I don't want to keep you all night on the survey. But there's some interesting information on the survey, and it will be posted online following the meeting, I guess tomorrow at some point in time. We'll have all this online. So if you don't get it tonight, you'll be able to get it. But the survey was conducted on January the 13th through January the 26th, so 13 days. And we had 743 respondents. Lauren? So among these results, I want to make sure people understand who reported, who responded to the survey. The map shows a little red boundary around the GT area, which we call the impact area. And within that impact area, 23.6% of these surveys came to us. Outside of that area was 76.4%. So along the entire corridor, if you'll take to the next page, Lauren, it represented really two major zip code areas in Mesquite. 65% came from the 7150 and 23% came from 75149. So from that large group of people, we began to see what some patterns that began to emerge about people's feelings about GT. First of all, 83% recognized that this retail area is an important part of this neighborhood. Richard talked about the fact that one of the things we had to do from the very beginning at Casa View was to create this reconnection to the neighborhood, and that bridge physically does that, but we think economically and from a planning perspective, this connects it in an even bigger area, and clearly the community agreed. That's an important element of our neighborhood is that retail area and the success of that retail area. Lauren? So question 5, we ask, what's your primary reason for frequenting this section of Gus Thomasson? 53 to 73% basically said that they use it for business purposes. So a lot of people rely on the corridor, and a lot of people spend time there on a frequent basis. Lauren? We ask about traffic. We ask people, is the traffic during the time you are on GT typically light or moderate or heavy? 72% basically said yes, there's pedestrians there every time I'm there, and 67% said it's moderate, 22% said it's heavy. So the traffic indicates that, yeah, there's a lot of people there, and oh, by the way, there's also a lot of pedestrians there when we go through. Lauren? Question 10 talked about during the time you normally visit Gus Thomasson Road between Carla and I-30, do you find that drivers are obeying the speed limits or driving as you would expect? Many said they were normal, but 60% said it was either excessive or there were irregular patterns of traffic along that corridor. So there's clearly some concern that the people that are driving through this corridor are either speeding or not necessarily obeying the traffic laws. Not really conducive to the number of pedestrians that people recognize were being in that area. So something to create a little more safe environment to try to slow that traffic down seems to be consistent with what most people responded to as a need in that corridor. The next one, Lauren. We asked the question is, should the revitalization of the old retail areas be a priority for the City Council? 84% said yeah. Revitalizing that area, retail, is critical. Regarding the Gus Thomasson Retail Corridor, do you support economic incentives whereby the city partners with businesses to promote business growth and vitality? 83% said yes. And that's exactly what that tax increment reinvestment zone program is all about. It's about creating the funds so that when a group comes in and says, you know what, I'd like to improve my business out here, but I'm going to need some help getting some of the parking and some of the public areas built to make that business work. Well, guess what? Now we have a fund to help them do that. So this defines that partnership that this survey said was very important that we observe. Lauren? We asked the question, would you consider the Gus Thomasson area between I-30 and Carla Road an area that needs revitalization? 87% said yes. So clearly there's a recognized need in the area. Next one, Lauren. We asked people, what businesses do you frequent in the Gus Thomasson area? And it was kind of all over the board, but in general, 34% were auto-related, 33% hardware, 41% grocery, 53% retail, and the largest category was food service, which made sense because most of the people in the survey spent a lot of time talking about what kind of restaurants and food services we'd like to see in that corridor. So, Lauren, specifically, we saw a couple of categories emerge as the uses that we like to have on Gus Thomasson. Retail clothing was clearly one. By far the largest was restaurants, and with a stipulation that they not be fast food restaurants. With a stipulation that let's have sit-down restaurants that begin defining an opportunity for me and my family to be able to go there and have a meal without necessarily going through the drive-through. Grocery was important, obviously. It was stipulated since 27.4% said, you know what, we need to make sure that we have grocery opportunities. And again, the requested uses go way beyond that, but that was the top four. Lauren. So 16 said, did this survey cover all the topics you feel are current challenges for Gus Thomasson? 46% said yes, but there was a lot of folks that said no, I've still got other concerns. 33% said was specific about those other concerns. And if you'll go to the next slide, Lauren, we dug a little deeper into what some of those other concerns were. 20.7% of them were traffic related. There was concerns or questions about roundabouts, 16.5%. 18.9% wanted to talk about road conditions in general and how we get roads repaired. Almost 22% were not sure. 27.2% were concerned about housing-related issues, and 14.2% were concerned about crime. So there was a lot of different feelings that people expressed in the survey that weren't necessarily related to the questions that were asked, but it did give, I think, some perspective on the need to pursue the project in the corridor. So in conclusion on the survey, 4 main points under revitalization. We need restaurants with seating and not just fast food. We need quality grocery. We need specialty shops. We need unique retail. On the traffic side, the message was slow it down, protect pedestrians, and discourage cut-through traffic. So I think in conclusion, the one thing I appreciate being a part of this project is because this is a community that has recognized uniformly that there's a need to do something in this area. It looks a lot like I thought downtown Grapevine looked in 1989. That's a fun portion, that's a fun project to be a part of, because being a part of something that's going to be transformed into something brand new is fun. And it's something that we're all very proud to be a part of. I've enjoyed continuing working on the project. I hope to continue working on it, and I appreciate your time this evening.
Y'all will be happy to know that I'm the last speaker, and I've only got 2 slides. Okay? Real quickly, my job is to talk about, the government doesn't hand a city $3 million without requirements of strings. So I'm supposed to kind of educate y'all on what those strings are. We have an agreement both with the Council of Governments and with the Texas Department of Transportation, and they're very specific on what we have to do in order to get that full $3 million reimbursement. And those things are, we have to reduce the number of travel lanes from 6 to 4. We have to add enhanced bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And what they mean by enhanced is it's wider sidewalks and dedicated marked bicycle lanes. We have to add additional landscaping, what they call enhanced landscaping. And that just doesn't mean an old cedar elm in a median, every 100 feet. That means shrubbery and flowers both in the median and in the parkways adjacent to the sidewalks. And finally, we have to attract private mixed-use development. As this project's designed right now, we meet all of those requirements. And with the completion of the Villas of Anston Park and that associated first floor retail, we meet that last requirement. So basically, we'll get the $3 million. Next slide. But the reason a lot of y'all are here today is you don't necessarily like what's proposed, and my other job is to tell you what happens if we start changing this project. So I'm going to talk about some of those impacts. Since we have 2 written contracts for this project, if we change it, we can't change the project scope unilaterally. We have to get both the approvals of the Texas Department of Transportation and the Council of Governments. You need to understand this was a very competitive process. The difference between winning and losing on these grants was 1 point on about 100 out of 150 points. In the city, if we lose 7 points on their scoring methodology, we fall below that line, and it's very likely that they would rescind the grant from us. We've also talked to the Council of Governments to confirm this, that in the event we lose more than 7 points, they're going to rescore the project, and we could, in fact, lose that money that we're owed for the project. And not only that, but that earlier when Mr. James showed you the $268,000 we've received, we'd have to give that back. And then there's one final other adverse impact that happens if we substantially change what have already developed to this date, and that's that we could adversely impact those first floor retail development on the Villas of Anston. And I understand that there's already a business that's signed a letter of intent to put about a 4,000 square foot restaurant down on that first floor, and that gets into jeopardy. And one of those things that was in the needs survey was that something other than fast food for dining, and that's what this brings. So again, we put that in jeopardy, or the city would place that in jeopardy if we do any substantial changes to the project. And that ends my portion of the presentation. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to the mayor.